G'day and welcome to our second DIY video. We had a bit of a good reaction actually to our Bigfoot installation video, despite the noise from the traffic and the occasional truck rolling past our warehouse door here. But there you go, we figured if we had a go, people might appreciate it. Today, we're going to show you the simple principles involved in installing a Flat Earth Kayak Sail. Now, we haven't done this before, and there's been a very good reason we haven't done it before, and that is that every single kayak deck is different. And if we start giving people measurements and very strict instructions, the chances are when you get your sail and you start measuring, what we've told you isn't going to work, or it isn't going to work precisely. So up to this point, we've relied on a really comprehensive guide on 4 boats that our friend in Scotland, Douglas Wilcox, had put together. That's up on our site. It's still a really good step-by-step guide to a lot of different kayaks. But there are some principles that hold, and today we thought we'd show you exactly what they were. Mick Robb, who started Flat Earth Sails, he's made some fantastic fitting guides as well. In fact, Mick used to leave the camera running for 10 minutes while he went and had a cup of tea. And when I asked him why, he said, well, I hope that the people who are watching maybe have the time to go and have a cup of tea as well. So the idea is you'll be able to pause, have a look at what we're up to, and hopefully when you get your Flat Earth Sail, the whole process will be somewhat demystified. I've been using them on expeditions for a decade. Rob, many more years than that.
Probably about 20.
Yep, 20 years of expeditioning. Back from the days when using a sail would draw loud cries of cheat, up to nowadays when these lovely simple designs have become very mainstream, and the idea of cheating, well, that only applies if you consider cheating is having more fun. The first time I used one in any meaningful way was on a big expedition a number of years ago. I was sitting on the beach about to paddle 95 kilometres across a very wild stretch of water. I'd had one tiny little trial run prior to that. We had a 15 to 20 knot breeze that was forecast to come over our right shoulder for most of the day. And I sat next to Rob on the beach and I said, okay, what do I need to know? Tell me about this sail.
And I said, just forget it's there.
Ignore it. And I got to say, at the end of that 95 kilometres on what was an awesome day, just an awesome day, that's the best advice I ever had. There are obviously some safety considerations with any kayak sail. You do need to realise that supercharging the boat can also supercharge the risks. But if that would depend on your ability to handle rough water and downwind paddling as a skill.
Yeah, I think in describing to Mark that he really didn't need to do anything very different, I was aware that he had lots of experience in paddling downwind in strong conditions. We were hoping to get at least a beam breeze or a helping breeze and sea during the day. And so the aim was to think about it pretty much as he'd be thinking about attacking those same waves without a sail, but just knowing that the sail would amplify any errors that he made along the way, but also reward him greatly for any good moves that he managed to put in along the way.
Mick obviously was the guy that took a whole range of sail designs that we'd all been using for many years and turned it into Flat Earth Kayak Sails. He simplified it. We'll show you some of the safety features that he built into his designs during the course of this video. We miss Mick, he was our buddy, but we're very proud to be able to carry on with his sail manufacturing here in Australia, and a royalty from each sail still goes to Lynn and Mick's family, which is something we're very proud of. So we hope you enjoy our second attempt. Again, forgive us the odd traffic noise heading past, but we're not in the studio, we're here in our store in Miranda in Sydney, so enjoy the presentation.
So what we have here is a model that shows you in very clear plan view what all the parts are that you'll get when you get a Flat Earth Sail kit. and also an explanation of the simple principles behind how the sail works, how it deploys, and the steps that are involved in putting it all together. So if we start right down the bow of the boat, or the front of our model here, you'll notice that we have an attachment point which you'll have to determine. In this case we've got a deck button on our Audax model over there. It's actually attached directly to the front carry toggle line, but that's a decision you might have to make. There's a block here, like a little pulley. And this block runs from a cleat along the foredeck and up onto this bungee cord here. The aim of this, when it's actually tension, is to actually hold the sail in an upright position. We'll show you a bit later on how by releasing that cleat, the entire rig drops easily onto the bow of the boat, onto the deck of the boat, and also how easy it is to deploy the sail by just simply pushing the sail into the air and pulling that line taut. But there it is. It's just a simple run of cord that runs from a cleat along your foredeck and through up to an attachment point on the mast. Then attached through the same saddle, which is on the mast, we have 4 stays, and those stays actually work against the tension of the uphaul line here to keep the sail stable in an upright position. There's a little bit of give, but the whole aim is to be able to hold the sail upright while the wind is driving the boat forward. Now the exact position of these and the attachment of these will be highly variable depending on your boat. But the principle is that all 4 of these stays or anchor points need to be equally tensioned when the mast is in an upright position. So some sort of adjustment is often useful. You can see this probably could do with a little bit of tweaking here. And some people choose to put a hook on each corner if they don't want to be stuck with lots of knot tying and readjusting. It's entirely up to you how you finish these off. The kit comes complete with these deck buttons. These deck buttons allow the mast stays to be anchored. You need 2 of them, one either side of the mast out to the sides, and 2 of them at a good distance back. So this gives you 4 points to anchor the mast when it's in the upright position. Now, you'll notice that there's another cord here that runs through another cleat. Now this cord is actually called the sheet line because it actually adjusts the angle and trim of the sheet of the sail. So there it is there. And you can see by changing the length of this line, I'm able to change the actual trim of the sail, or the angle of the boom relative to the direction of travel. So that's what this is all about here. And the ideal situation is to have these in an easily accessible position on opposite sides of the midline of the deck, although some people even prefer them both on one side. But we'll show you on our Audax behind us what we've chosen to do with that particular boat. Now, you'll notice up here where this attaches to the sail just below the boom that there's also a shock cord here, and that's to take excessive force caused by sudden gusts of wind. It's to actually cushion that, or to reduce the shock. This is a safety feature that Mick felt quite passionate about. He wanted his sails to be safe and accessible. There are people who feel that they would prefer to have the extra drive they get without this shock cord in the system. That's a judgment call that would be entirely up to them, but the way the sail is designed, and one of the safety features that's built into it from scratch, is actually to have this shock cord built in. This isn't the only place that has shock cord in the system. There's also shock cord located on this uphaul line here, and it's there for a similar reason, so that you don't have an absolutely rigid fixing point there which might make the sail or even the deck of the boat susceptible to excessive strains. again, some people choose to take these systems out of the loop, but they're there for a reason. If you do so, you do so entirely at your own risk. Another component that will be included in your kit when you buy a flat earth sail is this tube over a cord here. It's called the traveller, and the traveller actually trains the line from the sheet back down to the deck so that you don't hook it up when you make a paddle stroke. So that actually trains this line into a position where it doesn't get in your way. Now, it's called a traveller because as the line travels from one side to the other, in order to jibe, this continues to train it along the deck without changing the length or the trim too much from one side of the boat to the other. So that's what the traveller's all about. Just to show you how the sail raises and lowers, I uncleat the uphaul line there, having released the treat line. The sail will come down onto the deck like so. So there it is down on the deck. To deploy the sail into an upright position, normally just sitting here, normally just pop the sail up, pull it into that position, and it finds its own comfortable way up. All of this is possible because of this very handy little fitting here. These used to be a stainless steel universal joint, but this urethane universal joint is far more versatile and far safer in terms of the potential for it to get jammed and damage your deck or damage itself. So let's just pull this down again and have a look how that works. So here we are, and if I just simply turn that, I've released it off the deck here, and then I take this piece out of this piece. So these are never actually hard fixed. One just sits inside the other, and as it moves around, it's able to move in any direction or angle that it needs to deploy or come down, which is very handy. And yet when it's in the fully deployed position, all of the load that is borne by the deck is translated through this firm position at the bottom of the mast where this big washer sits. We've seen how all the parts that come in the Flat Earth Sail kit go together on our model, and I thought it might be interesting for us to show you how we've actually assembled and installed this onto one of our kayaks. The kayak you're looking at here is the kayak I paddled across Bass Strait, my most recent crossing, the one that I did with Mark and a few of our mates. A really, really good trip. And this was the boat that I used for that. So I fitted out a few of them for that trip using this basic approach. So one of the things that's pretty handy with the Audax is we consulted with Mick as to what would be the ideal locations for some of these fittings long before we'd even designed or finished designing the boat. And when we were finalising the deck layout, we were able to exploit that knowledge that we had, that insight that he'd been able to give us, in order to locate our four foredeck fittings in exactly the right spots for the stay attachment points. So there was no need to drill extra holes for stay attachment points. What I have done with this to make it a little bit easier is I've put a piece of Spectra which I've looped around the middle of the deck fitting, screw around the middle of the deck fitting, created a little loop here. So on the actual sail I used, this is a bit of a mock-up here, but on the actual sail I used for the trip, I had tiny little carabiners which hooked into each of these and made connecting or disconnecting the sail only less than a minute's work. So those are some of the things that you might consider if you were customising the sail for your own purposes. The other thing about this boat is this entire area is reinforced with double bias cloth, and the double bias cloth is extremely strong in a number of different planes, We've also got a little flat spot in the deck which you might be able to see there, and the flat spot is exactly the right size for our little universal fitting. So those are just a few things that have made life easier for us. If you've got a very peaky deck, for instance, you might end up having to fill around this on the deck just to make it sit nice and flat, whereas we've got an easy spot to attach to. So that's what we've done there. Because we know this is a very strong point, and we've used a very strong dynamic cord through here, a massive braking strain, we've been able to use that as our uphaul line attachment point as well. So we've saved drilling another hole in the foredeck for another little surface mounted deck button, as you would have seen on the model. We've avoided that by putting that through there. So that's something else you might look at your own boat and see whether or not you think this point is strong enough. Because if it is, it'll save you drilling another hole. Down this end, rather than using the strap that comes with the boat in order to tie the sail down against the deck, again trying to avoid drilling holes, I've simply put a ball and a loop of bungee on either side of the deck bag, which is integrated into my deck. And that allows me to tie the sail back down at the end of its use before I'm landing or launching or whatever, and pull it through this loop and lock it in with this bungee with the ball on the end. So that's how that works there. So here's my sail ready to deploy. Imagine I'm sitting in the kayak, and I wish I was sitting in the kayak. I wish I was paddling across Bass Strait again, to be honest. And I just give this a little push up into the air, keep pulling on that line. Now the sail's up. Little pull on the sheet line, and now I'm ready to go. I wish I was out there right now. You'll notice I've got a couple of other fittings here that are a bit different to what you'll get in the kit. Again, showing how many different variables there are. Rather than a traveller, even though this puts my sheet line off centre, I've got a little block here attached to one of my deck buttons, and that trains my sheet line, this line we were talking about before, trains it down the deck to a cleat which sits either side of the compass. So my lines aren't constantly fouling on my deck mounted compass. I've also used a different type of cleat, and again this is because of where the cleats are positioned and because of just a personal preference I have for top loading cleats with a little fair lead. A fair lead captive is a way of making the line captive ahead of the cleat. So if it uncleats, it doesn't sometimes uncontrollably uncleat, and then the whole lot disappear over the side with me chasing it. So these are all fittings that you can add. They add expense. Not everyone feels they're necessary. We respect that. Just trying to show you some of the different variables you might choose to go with if you're planning to set up your flat earth sail. One of the great appeals of the flat earth sail is its simplicity. Of all the different kit products that you might encounter over the years, DIY projects, we hope you'll agree that this one has one of the fewest number of moving parts. Very little complexity and nothing hidden. Everything is as you see it. Because of this, it's amazing how many different ways people have found to optimise the installation for their own purposes. When Mick designed this sail, the incredible appeal that it had for people and the incredible uptake that it had in the market was because it was so simple, it was so intuitive, and it allowed people to get out on the water and have more fun. Made their heavy boats lighter on long trips, was a great booster if you had to tow somebody home, so it actually had a safety aspect. But at the end of the day, the other thing about it that's so appealing is it's so easy that there's no disincentive to taking it out and using it whenever you feel like. The thing to remember about this, and I know it was always Mick's intent, was that this was actually a sail for kayakers. It wasn't actually an attempt to turn your kayak into a small yacht. The idea was always that this is a way of supercharging your paddling or even just getting some more speed. It was not about turning your boat into a sailing boat.
when we took over production, obviously after Mick's sad passing, I was quite keen to have a look around the market, what other sails were out there. And what struck me mostly was how complex they were, and also how they had some pretty big claims about what they could and couldn't do, which didn't really wash with my experience with this. This is simple. This goes downwind. It's a help if you're going across the breeze because it lifts your stern up and makes the load in your boat pretty much disappear. But it's not a magic sail. It doesn't paddle up. It doesn't sail upwind. You got to paddle to go upwind, or go very, very, very slowly if you've worked out some trick to make it work. So the sail you've seen today is the 0.8, the trade wind 0.8. That's also available in a 0.7 metre and a 1 metre. You can read all the specs on those sails on the Flat Earth Kayaks website. And the new footloose sail, which is loose-footed, more high performance, fast becoming our most popular sail. They're available through the Flat Earth Kayaks website internationally, in the US, all the way through the world, other than Europe, where you can buy them from Carrytech in Scotland, our dear friends who've been the agent for Flat Earth Sails for many years. If you're in Australia, we've got a number of great dealers around the country, and they always have good stock. So we hope you enjoy your Flat Earth sail. Well done, Rob.
Thanks, Mark.
Well done. Thank you.
I'm not going to teapot.
Try not to teapot.
You're trying not to teapot?
I'm not teapot.
No teapot.
No.